Hi everybody. One of the questions that I get asked a lot with Kiwi Lane is how I do a lot of my embellishing on my layouts. And as you can see, it can be as simple as just adding an element like stickles, or it can be as elaborate as layering and then adding extra texture like buttons or embossing or anything else. One of the things that I do love doing with embossing is I will put my piece into an embossing folder. I'll actually ink the embossing folder before I put the piece in there and then emboss it. And that way the ink actually gets exactly where I want it from the embossing folder. And I'm not going over and getting a lot of shadows and things that I really don't want. That's one technique. That technique and everything else you can find anywhere online. There's lots of videos about doing that with embossing folders and such like that. But what isn't out there very much is how to do the layering with the Kiwi Lane. And the Kiwi Lane is pretty simple. It's a template system. It's a trace and cut system. And you basically go from template to tracing to your finished product. And there's a couple of little tricks that I've kind of learned along the way that I wanted to show everybody and teach everybody, because it will really make your cutting with Kiwi Lane and everything else a lot more enjoyable. Some people don't like fussy cutting and cutting templates and stuff because it's kind of tedious and it's a pain. And so I've kind of developed a couple of different ways to really help eliminate a lot of that tedium. So I wanted to show that to you. The first thing is, when you put your template down and you've put it on your paper and everything else, don't try and cut it with this whole big old paper. Go ahead and take your scissors and just, get in there and get your paper down to a much more manageable size. That is number one. The second thing is, especially with Kiwi Lane, just because these lines are straight, it doesn't mean you have to cut it that way. This is supposed to be a palm tree. Have you ever come across a palm tree that's perfectly straight? No, that's not how they're made. So if you're going to go in and you're going to cut and you're going to do this, feel free to go in and kind of make it a little wonky and give it a little texture, or even take like a textured pair of scissors, or, you know, those old Fiskars, whatever type of scissors that have a decal or whatever else, and make it a little bumpy, make it a little textured. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing that says that just because you've traced that exact line with Kiwi Lane, that that's how you have to cut this. The same thing goes when you're doing something like this and you're trying to create a shadow. Kiwi Lane doesn't have shadow templates. So the only way to create a shadow template is, if you have a Brother machine, that's a fabulous thing. It'll do it for you. Cheater's method. But the second thing is, instead of going in and cutting on the line, what you would do is you would go in and you would cut off of the line and just eyeball and give yourself that 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch, whichever you like to do, and cut it that way. It's entirely up to you. But the main thing is that you don't have to be perfect with these templates. You really, really don't. Okay, another thing that when you're cutting that I see a lot of people having a problem with is how to do these types of lines. And what I see all the time is people cutting like this and then turning their scissors and then turning their scissors again. And what you're doing when you're doing that and you're turning your scissors as you're cutting is you're bending and you're folding your paper and you're not getting crisp, clean cuts. And there's a way around that that is not only going to save that from happening, but it's going to save your hands and it's going to save a lot of time. Find a spot that goes out to the edge and come in from the edge and catch that curve. And then come into a point and then do your next one and catch that curve. Join that point and then pull your piece off. Now you'll see I didn't cut it perfectly. If I want to go back in and clean that up, I can, or I don't have to. I can just go ahead and keep on cutting and do my little thing. Okay? That's it. It's as simple as that. And then you got your big one here. So you're going to go in and you're going to cut that and then come in, catch that angle there, and boom, there's that piece there. And again, I'm going to cut in and then cut my next piece. Take that out. I'm going to cut in, cut my next piece. And again, if you want to give it an extra curve, give it an extra curve. If you want to, you know, feather it a little bit more, if you want to put a couple extra little palm pieces in there and do a little extra cuts, go for it. You can do anything you want with this, okay? Another thing that people ask me all the time, I'm going to have to go ahead and switch this one because it's almost all the way cut, is how to do the layering. Well, simple. You trace the template onto a second piece and then you add that second piece. But what a lot of people think is, okay, well, my cuts aren't perfect. If I tried to layer that like that, it doesn't work. Well, the simple solution is that. And then you add this piece onto the other piece. It's that simple. Don't make it any more complicated than it has to be. Don't overdo it or whatever else. Keep it simple, guys. Okay? Another thing that a lot of people ask me about is how to do the layering with the inks. And adding texture and adding depth with inks is actually really easy. It looks like this is difficult. It's not. These daubers are wonderful little things, and you can do a lot with them. And what I mean by that is it's not just about going ahead, getting your ink on your piece, and then hitting your edges, which, yeah, that's exactly what we want, because we want that dimension, we want that depth, we want that shadow. We want to hide our scissor cuts. We want to hide our pencil, and this is a great way of doing it. But if you want to add the extra little bit, what I go ahead and do sometimes is I'll take a pencil and really lightly, I'll just come in and I'll add my little lines. And that's as simple as it is, okay? And then I take my dauber, and I know it's been inked up because I use it quite a bit. But what I'll do is I'll test it out, and I'll make sure that there's a little bit of ink that's on that edge. Okay, I found the edge that has that ink that I want. See how it gives that nice, sharp little image? So I want that on that edge. So I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to find where that edge is, and I'm just going to kind of run that right along the edge where my pencil mark was. And what I'm doing is that heavy little place where the ink was, picks up that pencil, and it smooths out that lead from that pencil. Because you got to remember, graphite pencils will blend. And so what the ink is actually doing is it's kind of smudging and blending that a little bit more. That's kind of why whenever you have like a little pencil mark on the outside, when you run ink on it, it tends to look like it's a bit darker. Because the dauber has actually blended that graphite into the actual ink. And that's the same thing that this is done. Now, I know a lot of people will go off and say, yeah, but the shadow should be going down. So what? It looks cool. Whether it's right or not, that's, if you want to be that picky about it, then go from the other side and do the same technique. But for me, it's easier with the dauber to go ahead and trace along the round edge. And the round edge in this case would be going this direction. But by all means, if you want to do it the other direction, go for it. I personally don't mind. So again, all I did, the same thing I did with the edging here and creating that, I did the same thing with my leaves. I just took my pencil and I carried over where that edge would come in, and I carried over the frond, and I carried over the edge, and then I carried over the front, and then I did the same thing with the ink, and I just traced in and brought it in like that. And that gave me that dimension. Another thing that people are like, well, wait a minute, that's not like the template is. Well, of course it's not. The template goes this way. So to create it, flip the template over. Flip them, guys. Flip them, flop them, do whatever you want. You know, you make this piece longer, you can elongate it, you can shorten it. You can do whatever you want with these templates. Just because they look exactly like this doesn't mean that's how they have to be. I've done many layouts where I've made things a little bit longer, I've made things a little bit shorter, or cut it a little bit smaller on the inside of the line to give two different sizes. Just because you have one thing doesn't mean this is how you have to do it. If you wanted to go in and trace these individual fronds and add more of them underneath to give it even more texture, that's a great idea. Go for it. Make it as thick as you want. It doesn't have to have 5 layers. It can have 10 if you want. It can have 6. It can have 8. It can have whatever. So just feel free to keep adding on to these templates. They don't have to be as plain Jane as you think that they are. You know, the other thing is I went ahead and I added little coconuts. And, you know, if you don't like the big buttons, then go to little buttons. You know, coconuts don't have to all be the same size, so change up the sizes. I know I got a smaller button in here somewhere. Oh, there's one. Nope, that's the same. Okay, Frankie, you gave me lots of little buttons that are all... There we go, there's a smaller one. There you go. Okay? So, yeah, you can make them all the same. You can add them. You can change the different sizes. You can add a coconut. You can take a coconut away. You know, it's entirely up to you how you want to do that. I even took a coconut and I put it down on the beach like it fell from the tree. So, be creative, you know. Add, take away, change it up, cut it smaller, cut it bigger. It's entirely up to you. Just because this is your Kiwi template, even though a lot of the templates are gorgeous and the designs are perfect and, you know, hey, they are what they are. You can always do more. You can always do less. It's entirely up to you and how much you want to put into it. But I just wanted to show you how I went ahead and got a little bit more depth and dimension out of mine. Just for that little foofy accent. All right, well, I hope you like it, and thanks for watching. See you soon.